Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South Africa had been hoping to get its hands on vaccines to roll out a campaign from next month, but those plans are in jeopardy as concerns grow that the Covid-19 variant currently driving the country's second wave may not respond to available inoculations. Also, Kenyan primary and high schools reopen 9 months after closing because of the pandemic. Social distancing is going to be tough, and some parents are worried that it's still too early to return to class. And 3 are killed in Cameroon in an attack by Nigerian Boko Haram jihadists. The country is struggling to tackle a security threat on 2 fronts, as it's also facing an ongoing insurgency from English-speaking separatists. We hear from our correspondent in the country. But first, scientists in South Africa are racing through tests to see if available Covid-19 vaccines work against the variant of the virus, pushing up the country's infection rate. UK experts first raised the concerns. The South African variant 501.V2 has multiple mutations and is more infectious than the original. It's expected to quickly become dominant in and around Johannesburg. The world's richest countries have already started to roll out their vaccination campaigns. South Africa had been hoping to get its first doses next month. The government has, though, been accused of moving too slowly. MC Ferreira tells us more.
I think there's been widespread acceptance of the president's decision last week to move the country back to level 3 lockdown, including banning alcohol sales again, because it helped to free up beds in trauma units over the new year. But it's facing a storm of criticism for failing to plan ahead because it knew that a second deadly wave was coming and to fuel the credible vaccination program. The Minister of Health was very obviously feeling pressure from the medical fraternity last night when he called the press briefing, and he said that the government is now planning to vaccinate 40 million people, or that's 67% of the population, by the end of the year. But it's simply seen as not being enough, fast enough. And also there's very scant detail. He said come February or March we may have in hand enough vaccine doses for 10% of the country, but then conceded that the government's still not sure how it's going to procure enough for the other 57% of that target figure. And he also raised the excuse that the country lacks the funds to pre-purchase vaccines that poorer nations have managed. So Labour, the opposition and scientists are saying the government's at least 4 months behind schedule, and that the way it's handling this very much recalls the crisis of the 1990s when South Africa, at the height of the AIDS pandemic, spectacularly failed to roll out antiretroviral treatment.
So where do plans for starting a program of inoculation stand, considering this new worry that current vaccines may not work against the South African variant of Covid-19?
Well, since the news broke this morning, there's been no official word from the Health Ministry as to what this would mean in terms of vaccine delivery. But we did hear from Glenda Gray. She heads the Medical Research Council and also the team trialling the Johnson & Johnson vaccine here, that it has been administered during the second wave. So she said this luckily would mean that by the end of the month, we should have an indication of whether, in fact, the strain that's now sweeping through the country is resistant to the vaccine. Gray doesn't think it should necessarily delay vaccine access, but that the scientists now have to keep a very keen eye on whether there are breakthrough infections among those in the trial group. The scientists here working on the trials of the Oxford vaccine also acknowledge that there's a chance that it doesn't mean that it won't work, but that it will not be fully effective against the latest strain. But then I think we heard from scientists at Oxford University today that if this proves to be the case, then the vaccine would be tweaked, but that this need not take a year and that it could possibly be done in as little as 6 weeks.
MC Ferreira there for us. Now, Kenyan primary and high schools reopened on Monday, 9 months after being shut down because of the pandemic. Although safety measures have been brought in, many classrooms were packed. Social distancing is going to be tough to maintain, and some parents are worried that the return has come too soon. Nicola Chemin has more.
Kenyan children experienced one of the longest school shutdowns around the world. Most students had not been back since March. Only a few age groups had returned in October. All schools reopened this Monday and many parents were relieved.
Mimi sitaki watoto wakae kwa nyumba, nataka watoto waendelee na masomo. Bora sanitizer ikue na maji ya kuosha mikono ikue. Temperature, kitu ya kupima temperature pia ikue na watoto waendelee na elimu.
But social distancing will be impossible. In this Nairobi school, for example, the headmaster said the smallest class had 82 students, far more than the recommended amount of around 25. In this other school of the Kenyan capital, children line up to wash their hands and have their temperatures taken, but some parents remain anxious.
We really don't know if other children in school are having the virus, or even if the teachers are having the virus, or even the support staff in school are having the virus. So we have that fear.
Kenya has recorded 1,600 deaths since the start of the outbreak. The World Health Organization said prolonged school closures presented many risks for children in poor countries. Among them are higher rates of teenage pregnancy, bad nutrition, and permanent dropouts from school.
In Central African Republic, Faustin Archange Touadéra has been re-elected as president after the first round of voting. The Electoral Commission declared his win with a 53.9% absolute majority in the December 27th vote. Behind him was former Prime Minister Anicet Georges Dologuele with a little over 21% of ballots. Now, he has already rejected the results, alleging fraud. The Constitutional Court, though, will still have to validate the outcome. Thousands of voters were not able to take part because of unrest and threats from armed rebels who emerged from a 2013 conflict in the country. Earlier on Monday, prosecutors also announced an investigation into former President Francois Bozizé, who is accused by the government of working with militia to plot a coup ahead of the December election. Now, 3 people were killed in Cameroon in an attack blamed on Nigerian jihadist group Boko Haram. The country is struggling to tackle the security threat on 2 fronts, as it is also facing an ongoing insurgency from English-speaking separatists. Regina Sondo has the latest.
The new year has begun with little hope for calm in the restive regions of Cameroon as fighting, violence and insecurity has continued in the far north and English-speaking regions of the country. Now, local authorities in the far north region have reported the killing of members of a self-defense group, 3 of them by suspected Boko Haram militants early Monday. Observers have accused Cameroon of diverting military resources to the Anglophone regions, reason why there have been frequent attacks from jihadist groups in recent days in the far north region. These raids just came days after President Paul Biya said in his New Year address that security forces have significantly reduced jihadist actions in the far north region. But then Cameroon has continued its military response to the ongoing separatist conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, though observers say that what Cameroon needs is a mediated solution that is going to address the root causes of the Anglophone crisis that has been ongoing for 4 years now.
Regina Sondo there for us. Now, Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine has vowed to protest against any irregularities in the presidential elections due on the 14th of January. The singer is challenging longtime leader Yoweri Museveni and has a strong following amongst young Ugandans. He's repeatedly been targeted by authorities ever since he erupted onto the political stage in 2017. He most recently was arrested last Wednesday, the 3rd time in 2 months. The campaign's seen some of the worst political violence the country's experienced in decades. Wine said that Ugandans will not accept a fraudulent election.
This is going to be more or less a protest vote, in my view, and protesting comes in voting, and protesting comes also in demonstration, for as long as it is within the acceptable legal confines. So it would be arming the regime, telling them that we are going to walk to work, or we are going to sit in, or we are going to do this or that. But all I can assure you is that we shall protest any injustice. We shall protest any illegalities and any irregularities.
Well, parts of East Africa have been battling swarms of locusts for approximately a year now. In Kenya, 20% of vegetation has been consumed by the insects. Farmers are racing to locate swarms and eradicate them before they destroy their crops. Yinka Oyetade has more.
It's been nearly a year since giant clouds of locusts swarmed parts of the Horn of Africa, eating up crops, leaving little left for farmers and their livestock.
Hiyo nini ndo nimekula sana kwa sababu akuli nini amewasha tu mayo tu peke yake hapa tu sote.
Kenya is grappling with its worst infestation in 70 years. 20% of vegetation there has gone down the drain since the outbreak. The swarms, made up of 40 to 80 million locusts, can eat the same amount of food as 35,000 people in one day, having a devastating effect on the livelihoods of millions. Now locals in this part of Kenya are looking to technology to stay one step ahead. They are using drones that allow them to locate the locusts and send smoke signals to villagers.
Hii kampuni nimefunza sisi ikipata hiyo kitu kwa mistuni weka kamera itumie sisi akikuja kuua hiyo wadudu mbaya sana.
Despite the team's efforts, new swarms are on their way from the north of the country. But the locals are hoping that this new method of saving crops will allow Kenya to be better prepared for a new round of infestation.
And now there are swarms in Somalia, places in Garissa, so we keep vigilant, we keep looking along our borders and activating our surveillance teams.
With the drones, locals here have already eradicated 300 swarms. The herders here are hoping its success can be replicated in other parts of East Africa that are also under siege.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again. Take care.
Arctic is going to be exploited, and the scale of this exploitation will only grow.
We have a beautiful planet, we need to protect it, and we can use space exploration to better understand it.
Now we've moved from, is that real, to what do we do about it?
Join us on Down to Earth, where we explore the incredibly complex relationship between humans and our planet. We're here to ask the tough questions and find answers that may just surprise you.
Down to Earth on France 24 and France24.com.